Thanks so much. I heard you did quite a bit of research and I'm very flattered. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I'm really excited to be here in Calgary. I have to say that it's a little bit difficult to follow Sir Ken Robinson. I had the chance to see him back at TED. Actually, it was the first time I met him, and then in Mexico, so it's really nice to be here again. And actually, I remember when I looked at the schedule and I realized that I would be going directly afterwards. I think I may have said something to my boyfriend along the lines of, okay, he has a British accent and a knighthood, I have nothing, what is my cool factor? And he said, well, you're 15. So I hope that the student perspective that I bring will be of some value to everyone here in the audience today. And it looks like Prezi actually might be working. Let me take a second and open this up here. Sorry, it seems like every time I ever say anything about advocating technology whatsoever, something goes wrong. However, this is actually, I think, one of the best parts because it shows that, sometimes things do mess up, but you just persist. Yay, it's working. Okay, so that just made my day. Now, to start off the presentation, I want to imagine looking at my grandchildren and telling them about my childhood. Maybe a bit of a weird place to start, considering that I don't even have kids, but I wonder what kinds of questions they'll ask. Did you really play outside all the time, Grandma? Did you really have shelves upon shelves full of books on paper? And at this point, their mouths will drop open in amazement at how old I am and how ancient this idea is. Yes, I'll say. And oh, by the way, I had a backyard that more closely resembled a junkyard than the neatly manicured lawns of my neighbors. And there was a shed out back with an ecosystem growing on its roof, practically. We had to avoid these random planks of wood that were lying around that had nails jutting out of them, and I think my sister had a scare once about getting a tetanus shot when she stepped on one. We had a secret passageway out from our backyard to 88th Street where we would run sometimes, and even after the neighbor put up a fence, we would still sneak out to that street. We dug a 3-foot deep hole in the backyard. We swear we weren't burying a body, but we were looking for treasure. All this was incredibly liberating. And we had spaceships made out of chairs and blankets, and we came up with stories, so many stories of our own invention. We made these houses out of wooden blocks and drew characters on some of them. We didn't have pre-made Lego characters with backstories that came in the box or electronic toys that carried out the same routinized movements for us. All we had was what we made. We were the creators of our own fun and the enjoyers of it too. And as I wrote the speech, I actually did prove enjoyers as a word, did not have the red squiggly line. Learn something new every day. That's what I would tell my grandkids. And I wonder if they will be amazed. I wonder because I look around at kids growing up today. I have a baby cousin, and I see the toys they play with, and I see kids going to elementary school and middle school. And I realized that where my sister and I had ample opportunities to come up with the whole story, these kids are more often given opportunities to metaphorically and literally just fill in the blank. And this is not the kind of environment that is conducive to producing thinkers and doers of the 21st century, as I titled my speech. This is the kind of environment that produces ideal factory workers, as you know from hearing Sir Ken Robinson speak. And the ideals that I am taught when I walk into school, emphasized by everything from the passing bell and rigid schedules to discipline from the teacher for multitasking in class. Yes, believe it or not, I have gotten told to put away the book or close the notebook. Or the shame of getting a C or D or, God forbid, an F on a test. All this reinforces for me every day that I should be obedient and punctual and memorize what I am taught. When in truth, the skills that I will need far more are skills that go deeper than that. Creativity, adaptability, the ability to break rules and learn from failure. Think of one or two successful people of modern times. Maybe you think of Steve Jobs or Barack Obama or Wayne Gretzky or, yes, the one hockey player I know. Sorry. Whoever you think of who's creative or successful or has really made it in life, you realize that they didn't get there by necessarily always listening to what people told them would be realistic, by memorizing lists of information. They worked hard, they pushed themselves, and more than once they probably did things that somebody told them they couldn't do. I learned how to be creative, adaptable, to break rules and learn from failure, in large part because of my childhood experience. Not just those carefree days playing with my sister out in the junkyard reminiscent backyard and weaving intricate tales, but also because of the fact that I didn't go to school for 10 years. She didn't go to school, you might be wondering? What kind of parents does she have? Well, when I was 3 years old, and this is a picture of me at 3, you could say, "Aww." I was reading chapter books avidly. Actually, I started reading and then about 2 weeks later I told my mom, "Hey, I can read chapter books now." She didn't believe me, so I picked up one of these bug inspector books and began reading out loud after I came to like the 3rd or 4th chapter. I think she got tired and said, "Yeah, you know." And if I had gone to preschool, then I probably would have been learning my alphabet, so my parents knew it would have been a bit redundant, and they were concerned that my desire to learn and that love for reading that I got early on would be stifled by boredom. So instead I started learning at home with private tutors, my sister, and some neighborhood kids. And having friends from the neighborhood join us gave that social element that is often sometimes missing from regular homeschools. And this was all supplemented by taking classes at my school district's homeschooling resource center. This is a picture of us. And as you might notice, our friend was a lot older than us, and one of the great things was that I wasn't restricted by age. I wasn't put with all the other 3-year-olds. I got to take creative writing classes because I was advanced with 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds, which was one of the greatest experiences I had. And I'm glad that I had this freedom from an early age, because it allowed me to think and grow in a way that my peers with their bubble and worksheets at local elementary school did not. Some of you might think that this story has little relevance to the typical student, that I'm exceptional in some way, and that that's the real reason behind my ability to grow and succeed during this time. But I can't say more vehemently that this is untrue. Because I know of so many people. Some of them are in honors classes, some of them are not. They might be smarter or more diligent than me. They might be more innovative or creative or do math better. Actually, that I can say about just about everyone. But they weren't given the opportunities to develop and explore their interests and passions. And that's the only reason I'm standing here today, to share my story, and they are not. My passions were never ignored or dismissed because of my age. Instead, my parents and teachers celebrated them. Now, if I told you that during my years of learning at home that the teachers my parents hired were never certified and that 1 or 2 of them were actually still in college, you might feel a little bit horrified. But you see, what my mom was banking on was that message of this conference, the passion and purpose that these teachers brought. They were extremely passionate about their subjects. We had the chance to learn about the subjects that they really held near and dear. So I got an early education in art history and Mexican revolutionaries that I still consider extremely valuable. My mom wasn't particularly concerned about the sequence of our learning, as you would probably understand when a 7-year-old is able to list off more facts about Emiliano Zapata than George Washington, but rather if our tutors had passion for the subjects they were teaching, whether they could stimulate our interest and our curiosity. Through our close connection with them, we became as excited about the subjects as they did. Naturally, you might not find human anatomy to be especially exciting. Well, actually, if you're a little kid who's really gross, like I was, then yes, it is. But memorizing the names of various bones in the human body doesn't seem like a very enjoyable way to spend an afternoon. But I did, because I really thought, wow, if someone has this much passion on a subject, then obviously there's something interesting here. This wasn't your ordinary classroom. It was customized to us in many ways. My mom had regular conversations with our teachers about what we would learn, and we wrote a lot every single day. Some of you might be familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours rule, in which he says that you need to do something for 10,000 hours in order to master it, and we definitely got a head start toward that goal when it came to writing. We used writing to learn almost everything. Most kids learn SAT vocabulary words with flashcards, but we learned it by writing poems about the words without directly using the word, and then playing a guessing game with our classmates. So I picked the word insulin one time, and I wrote this. She would not listen, simply screamed, while others stared in shock. She put her mother in the pantry, locking every lock. She did not do her sums at all. She made fun of her aunt. Whenever asked to do something, her favorite word was can't. She would have continued if she hadn't packed her trunk and set sail on a caravel, which promptly sunk. And my experience in writing that poem, not only did I have the enjoyment of giving this little girl a tragic ending, I was really into that, but I also, I didn't have this feeling that vocabulary, that words were about drudgery and sitting down and staring at a flashcard and memorizing it because I had to get an A on a test. My goal was to make people laugh or to make my classmates guess the word, and that was something that was far more enjoyable for me as a young kid. Best of all, if we didn't like something, we had no qualms about telling the principal because she was, after all, our mom. We didn't have to wait a semester to get back test scores from some high-stakes test. And we had all this instant feedback, which was a very good thing because when you're 7 or 8 or 9 years old, you just don't have the patience to wait. And so all this collaboration that was going on every day between our teachers and us and our mom, and this discussion, meant that there was no permanent curriculum or lesson plan because we were the center of the plan. Fast forward a few years, and our perfect middle school started to dissolve when we moved to another city, and my older sister, Adriana, decided to try out public school in 7th grade. And when I saw the kind of assignments that she came home with, I definitely realized more clearly how lucky we had been because suddenly when she went to language arts class, she didn't have the opportunity to write essays about topics that really interested her. She got a packet that said, I think it was a strategy for writing sentences correctly. It was like red light, green light. And so she was writing sentence by sentence according to the strategy instead of having the chance to write stories and poems and all the other things we had done. And I started taking online public school courses to accommodate my frequent travel, and today I do 4 classes at regular school, 2 online. It's an arrangement that can be at times a little bit difficult to mesh with my extracurriculars because while lots of my friends might do tennis or clubs, I have speaking and teaching classes sometimes as well. I've been to more classrooms than probably any of my peers. To be precise, I've spoken to about 500 classrooms about language arts, leadership, other topics. And you might wonder how someone so young gets started on the path of teaching. And it began in a really unusual place. More specifically with Little House on the Prairie. Raise your hand if you've read the books. Yay! I'm seeing some fans in the audience. I'm glad to see that the books have found fans even in Canada. And so I really wanted to be a pioneer. This is Halloween from not too long ago. It was 2 years ago. Yeah, I dressed up as Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I have this very special place in my 7-year-old heart. In my room there is a veritable shrine to the books where I have the entire set. And I read about all her adventures and misadventures. I think that it was from those that I decided on my career aspirations, first writing and then being a teacher, because there was something so appealing about this image of the one-room schoolhouse and being able to hit kids with a ruler if they misbehaved. Not that part so much. And I just love this idea of being a teacher. Now this was a strange career choice at 7 years of age because young people don't tend towards teaching automatically or culturally. Actually, if I think about the Chinese word for teacher, which I have written in my abysmal handwriting, Lao Shen literally means old master. So to be a young old master is slightly incongruous. But I got my opportunity exactly that sooner than I expected. Because along with my comprehensive list of potential careers, I decided that I wanted to be a Polish author. And so when I was 6 years old, my mom gave me a used laptop computer. I began experimenting with it and trying all kinds of different fonts. The ease and convenience of spell check made me less self-conscious about my spelling. There were lots of things that made it quite perfect for me. Plus, being able to make words different colors, who needed more? I skipped dinner some days, or I tried to successfully, because I was so into writing at this point. If you want to see passion in a young person, you really only need to look to a picture of me at that age writing, because I would be completely focused on what was on the screen in front of me. And I loved reading and writing so much that when someone told me, I hate to read and I hate to write, it shattered my world a little bit, in the sense that up until that point, I had this extremely naive construction of what everyone liked to do. It's kind of like if you see young babies I think it's just a few months old, like if you play peekaboo, they'll think that you've literally disappeared because you're no longer in their field of vision. And in much the same way, because I, up until that point, had never met anyone who didn't like to read and write, I didn't know that such a thing could be possible. So my teaching career began as a journey, a quest of sorts, to solve that. I saw it as simply unacceptable that students wouldn't like to read and write, because there was a book for everyone. At least I thought so. And over the course of that journey, to really get more students to understand the value of language arts, I've learned a lot about teaching and learning, education, and technology. Through my unique role as a teacher and student across many mediums, both online and in person, in a small homeschool and a large public school, I found that increasingly the diversity of our students and the wealth of information we have accessible at our fingertips necessitates changing school so that learning is more customized for every student. In the olden days, wealthy families would hire governesses and tutors like Aristotle for Alexander the Great, and customization happened really naturally. Obviously, we have practical limitations, and giving every student their own Aristotle might be a little impossible, but I think that we should enable every student to become one. That is, being able to question, think deeply, and have an impact. Creating this model of school demands awareness of youth digital culture and its role in our education, actively involving the student voice, and meaningfully implementing technology. So to envision a learning environment that helps students become independent thinkers and creative doers, it's important to understand us through our digital activities and social connections on the internet. So I want to ask a question, which you can answer by raising your hand. How many of you would say you're confident in your understanding of how my generation uses the internet? Raise your hand if you can say you're confident. Seeing a lot of raised hands, awesome. Okay, so this should be quite a cinch for you guys then. FTW stands for A, feed the world, B, for the win, C, forget the word, D, finish the work. B. You guys are impressive. This is honestly, believe it or not, the first audience that has ever gotten that right. Is it something in the water, maybe? This is... Okay, these Canadians are amazing. Everybody knew that. Oh, and something else. When I first arrived in Calgary, I don't know if you guys have seen this at the airport, but there's this beautiful statue of horses, and I thought, well, this is a really cool statue, I'm just going to show it. And then as I came to the hotel, I realized that it was not just that statue, but people in Calgary really like horses. So I was considering taking a picture of every single horse statue that I saw and making an album on Facebook, but I decided that that could maybe get a little epic. So, yeah, really cool thing about your city. Anyhow, the reason I ask this question is because something like for the win has really become embedded in the lingo that we use online, and it's great to understand that. What about YOLO?
You only live once.
You only live once! Great! Did anyone see the Saturday Night Live take on that? I know it's kind of American. It was a pretty good one. It was like YOLO, so be careful. FTW and YOLO are in some ways the new OMG and RTFL, not because people no longer use those, but because FTW and YOLO have become so ubiquitous online that they even spawn digital memes that you can see all over Facebook and are pretty unavoidable. Young people like me or my older sister or my classmates can have tremendous influence on the cultural landscape as huge consumers of content. This is old news at this point, but the viral video on YouTube Friday, how many of you have seen it? Oh, interesting, not so many. I would treat you to the video, but I fear making your ears bleed. I heard some no's. Don't worry, I'm not so sadistic. Now, when I log into Facebook, I see things like viral videos being shared. I see troll faces on Valentine's Day. I see a lot of Forever Alone memes. Have you guys seen this? Anyone? So, if you're friends with some teenagers, ask them to maybe show you some of the more common ones. And it's things like this that are instantly recognizable to most of my Facebook friends. Whether looking at, creating, and sharing memes, watching YouTube videos or making them, reading celebrities' Tumblrs, or becoming YouTube stars, we aren't sitting back and waiting for grown-ups to tell us what to watch, read, or make. We're putting our own thinking online, showing the world what we can do. So what is the lesson here for education? Well, I would ask, what if we could make learning as viral and shared as memes on Facebook or videos on YouTube? What if we could use the connections of the online world to bring students and schools closer? And I would love to hear about some of the things that you've been doing. How many here use Facebook or Twitter as a communication tool with students? I've seen some raised hands. Awesome. Anyone use other online mediums besides Twitter and Facebook? Okay, seeing raised hands. And would you say that there's a positive response to that? Seems not awesome. So already, I guess I should have probably known this from the number of you who immediately knew what FTW and YOLO were, but you're really bounds ahead of, I think, a lot of your American counterparts, because quite often it's an uphill battle. At least I know, like in my school district, teachers being on Facebook or Twitter would be unheard of, just because of all the rules and regulations around it. So that's incredibly innovative, and I really think that this is the future of what education and connecting students can be. So I think that we can also go beyond communication and really move into an area where students feel free to produce content as part of their educational experience. So what I'm using right now is a Prezi, for instance, and I remember the first time I made a Prezi in school, it was really getting some oohs and ahs because everyone is used to PowerPoints. If we could do things like Prezi, Animoto, YouTube, Change.org, making petitions with our classmates, projects that have real-world impact, taking all of the best of the online world and bringing it into the classroom, I think that giving this opportunity for students like me to share our thoughts with a broader audience would be one of the most incredible motivators you could have. One thing to realize is that while social networking is certainly primarily about socializing, not education, students oftentimes are really taking action in very grassroots ways. Like for instance, I can remember having, and I still do have Facebook groups for all my classes where we talk about what the homework is and sometimes complain about procrastinating, of course. And groups like these, of which there are probably similar versions across the nation, are making learning more social. And in my school district, because of the lack of teacher involvement online, that this is all student-run, but I'm really glad to hear that you guys are implementing lots of communication online. Much as I love groups like this, it's still a relatively shallow use of technology when I think about what the potential is to give students more purpose in learning. And purpose is, of course, one of the major themes of the conference. To me, the ideal school is one where all students feel purpose in their learning. Because the question that you probably had throughout your high school education, middle school, maybe even, and elementary was, why are we learning this? Why are we diagramming this sentence? Why do I need to know what Latins and Greeks did, or Romans and Greeks? Why should I care about this word, or this book, or this essay? And for most of my educational experience, and probably most of yours, those questions weren't answered. To me, that's a really unfortunate thing, because unless a student is really interested in a topic naturally, then that will suck away any interest they have. They'll become bored really quickly. And so what we can do is really try to do things that allow students to see what I'm learning connects to an impact. As an example, I took on a project which was the National Education Startup Challenge with my friends Maya and Priya. And what this entailed was coming up with an idea that would help solve a problem in education, specifically around the target audience, so for instance, urban youth or something. And what we came up with was application for the future. We even made a rhyming slogan, bridge the gap, build an app, and we made a video about what our project would look like.
They said that I didn't have the technology skills I needed for the job. Now there's an app for that. Application for the future. This innovative new startup provides students in underserved school districts with the unique opportunity to build 21st century skills through designing an app. Working in teams of 5 with expert volunteer mentors from technology fields, students will refine their products to bring to a larger audience at the Consumer Electronics Show in January. Through the collaborative process, students will develop their teamwork and leadership skills, practice writing with clarity, and obtain valuable skills, all in the context of a real-world assignment. Bridge the gap, build an app. Application for the future!
So, the video pitch was a little bit cheesy, but we actually ended up being one of the winners in the contest, which made us really happy, of course. And in the process of thinking about this, I realized that one of the greatest untapped resources for thinking about how to solve educational issues is students. And I'm always really glad when there are students in the room at an educational conference like this. Actually, can I take a poll? Like, raise your hand if you're a student. to raise hands, awesome. Oh, great job orchestra, by the way, because, yeah, that was super impressive. Also, when I was having tech issues, I have to say that the really dramatic music made me feel like I was in a movie. Did not help with the stress at all, but definitely one of the more epic moments of my life. Yeah, sprinting to catch the speech and like hearing that music. That's why I'm wearing tennis shoes, by the way, because I really, really wanted to like come back to Sir Ken Robinson's teaching that. Anyhow, when I think about something like application of the future, not only do I gain that understanding of where students can play a key role in shaping the educational process, but I also see the future of project-based learning. Because when I say project-based learning, probably the first image that a lot of you have might be dioramas from history class, or art projects that years ago on for various subjects in high school or middle school. My sister once did a project in her 9th grade honors world history class that involved making a 3D map of India, consisting of this clay India, and then she put in some blue beads to represent major rivers. And she readjusted those. It took about 3 or 4 hours. And we actually had the chance to visit India in 2010. And guess what? She didn't remember anything about the geography of India from that project that took her 3 or 4 hours. What she remembered was the painstaking effort that it took her to put in all those little beads one by one, but for all that, she had no idea where major rivers were. And even when projects seem better designed, like student-produced documentaries, again, it's one person and one judgment instead of an authentic audience. If a student doesn't care what that teacher thinks for whatever reason, I mean, I really care what my teachers think, for sure, but there are definitely students who feel that I may not care as much. They really need an audience that can give real feedback to see how their projects work in the real world. Here are some excellent examples of how that's happening right now. A great example comes from this.
This is a pulse width driver. I guess we'll use it for the plasma speaker, but you can also use it for neon signs. And then if we go through a...
Sorry, I should pause out for a second and just preface it. There's this nonprofit, Student R&D, Research and Development, and they give a space for students to carry out innovative projects. This is one of the recent projects, which is a plasma speaker, and I actually had the chance to see it when it was being made. The great thing is that the organization is entirely student-run. The students who come and work on projects can be anywhere from middle school to university age, and so you can take a look. This is a project that they have.
Fluorescent tube, it excites the air inside, kicks off ultraviolet, and then the fluorescent powder turns it into visible light. So we've made the carrier circuit for the plasma speaker. Same one as before, but we're going to modulate it soon. But now we're just making sure our spark gap is accurate. And let's see how hot it is. It's a few million degrees.
Actually, a few thousand.
Just varying frequency through the arc itself.
Using a tone generator. You can hear the noises of the plasma speaker right here.
This is a tone generator. I've never seen a kit available for this, and I've spent the last like 5 hours just looking. There's instructables on it, but nobody offers a kit.
We actually have an amplifier downstairs that we use to drive speakers.
Yes.
I think if we turn those down enough, we could drive this.
Completely fine, yeah.
Do you want to go test that?
This can handle up to 15 volts, so we'll just measure it.
Let's go test it.
Yeah.
Well, alright, so I brought in my mixer over here, and we're actually going to be hooking up, we just hooked up this mixer to the plasma speaker. So, you can kind of hear the music.
One sound plays at a time, is ideal.
Yeah.
If it's like Mario, it's like a Mario song. Like the Halo theme. Any video game song, it's perfect because it's mono, you know? Today we made just tremendous progress. We took a theory of the circuit function and turned it into a working model. And there was no instructables, no guidelines. We just used basic knowledge and had it work out. It was fantastic.
Empowering students.
That's the best way to empower somebody.
Inspire great learning.
So when you see that pure joy, the yes, on his face, you wonder, how do we create more of those moments? And how do we make sure that those moments can be created in school, and not just by nonprofits, not just by extracurricular activities? I love the work that Student R&D does because I really see firsthand wow, students are getting super into projects, they're teaching themselves when they need to learn something, they're not grumbling about, oh, so-and-so said I have to learn this, or I don't know why I'm learning this. They know why they want to learn it. He spent 5 hours looking for instructionals because he wanted to make that plasma speaker. And they also run an event called Code Day, and I highly encourage you to check it out. I actually went to one of these, and it's this 24-hour event. One of the funnest 24-hour events you'll ever go to. Admittedly, I've only been to 2 in my life, so maybe I can't judge too well. But you get all these programmers in a room for 24 hours with only unlimited snacks and teamwork to keep you going in making a game or a mobile app. And the great thing is that you really don't have to have experience. I had honestly no experience. I didn't know a programming language. I came into there expecting to just be completely lost. And I realized actually that the feeling of being lost, of realizing that you had to teach yourself everything on the go, far from being confusing or scary, it was exhilarating. And so when students are thrown into situations where they can make things, where they can solve problems, where they can really apply their passion to something, I think that you'll see great things happen. You'll see the passion that was evident in that, yes, lots more. And the internet can empower us to do good by giving us effective tools or by providing connections to organizations like, for instance, Student R&D that we care about. When you see chats like, hey, what's up, LOL, and OMG, the first thought that comes to your mind might not be kids changing the world or kids using technology for social change, but that's what I've seen a lot in my own experience, and I think that we can really apply these lessons to school. I'm organizing the Educational TEDx Redmond Youth Conference, or I've been doing that for 3 years. This is 2010 picture down at the bottom, and there's one from 2011. So raise your hand if you're familiar with TED and TEDx. Wow, you guys really take the cake as far as being one of the most informed, awesome audiences ever. Plus you're Canadian, so it's like a bonus right there. And I don't know, I just get really excited about coming to Canada. And so TEDx Redmond is really evidence of what students can do when they're passionate about organizing something. And TEDx Redmond is entirely student-run. We had all students come and speak, and the majority of our audience was students. It was entirely free. And I think that the fact that we managed to get support, we managed to get Microsoft to come on board as a sponsor, and various local businesses, that we got some really high-profile people. Some of you might have heard of Taylor Wilson. He built a nuclear fusion reactor when he was 14, making me feel like a serious underachiever. And Jack Andreka, who built a new paper sensor for pancreatic cancer that is hugely more effective and a lot more inexpensive. We had young people like Jack and Taylor come and speak, really inspiring the audience. But also what they, as speakers at TEDx Redmond, showed, and we as organizers, was that students can be incredibly motivated when we have projects that are worth working on, when we have plasma speakers and conferences and books to write and videos to make, when we have things that we see will change people. Like with TEDx Redmond, we have 1,000 people in the audience this year, and I saw the looks on people's faces, and I heard the conversations afterwards about how they were inspired and what they were going to go into their community and do, and there is nothing more motivating than that. You definitely can't say that any A on a test would make me happier than the result from a conference like TEDx Redmond. And the speakers there and our organizing team also go to show something important, which is that social technology plus young people doesn't always equal chats on Facebook or distracting celebrity gossip. It can really equal social good. And this is an amazing way to learn. Another amazing way to learn is something that might not seem very intuitive at all, which is allowing students to teach. And I hope that seeing some students teaching will show precisely how this is the case. Many of you might know, as soon as you started probably studying education or having a chance to teach, that it's one of the best ways to learn. I think that I became a better writer because I wrote a lot, but also because I had the chance to get to know it inside and out, because I felt that responsibility to the classes that I was teaching about language arts. And a lot more students are really catching on to this trend and producing videos. So, for instance, like after my video conferences, I will post videos online. Here's an example. Let's skip ahead a little bit. I don't know that much. To mess with you, that's definitely one possibility. Some hackers just do that for fun. What's another possibility? And you can't see them on screen, but I'm video conferencing.
There could be bias. They might want you to think one way, not another. So let's say there's an article about someone who's pretty controversial, like, or a political figure, Barack Obama, let's say, for example. If a group of people who are really didn't like a Wikipedia article on Barack Obama and thought it didn't say enough about, I don't know, but something bad from Barack Obama's past. Okay, like how he smoked or something like that. If they thought it didn't have enough, they would suddenly put in this giant paragraph about Barack Obama and how bad his smoke habit is, and like put it right in the middle of the Wikipedia article. Now that's not necessarily false, but what it does is it creates sort of bias.
So that's just a snippet from a digital citizenship presentation to a group of high schoolers discussing bias, where it shows up, how you can look for it. And I think that having the opportunity to teach something like digital citizenship definitely made me more aware of the issue, made me think more carefully about what I posted. It made me block my parents on Facebook. My mom was giving me the people eye. I'm not blocking. Lists are really useful. Through the process of teaching, I thought also, hey, I'm not that special. There are lots of people who know a wide variety of things way better than I do. There are people I could learn from about math, and even language arts as well, about politics, about science. Why aren't they making videos? And so I did some searching, and there are other young people making videos. If you go to mathtrain.tv, you can find some excellent mathematics tutorials that are produced by high schoolers. And there are also even younger people than me. This is one from Cameron Manor.
Hi, my name is Cameron Manor, and today we are going to talk about germs. Hand germs, sneeze germs, achoo, and even keyboard germs. Germs are not for sharing. Did you know that one bacterium weighing 1/1,000,000th of a gram can kill a blue whale weighing over 100 million grams? Such is the power of germs. Now let's examine the science behind germs. Before Antoni Benvenuto discovered his wretched beasties, or germs, under his microscope in the 1600s, we assumed disease was caused by either evil spirit or naughty parents. When King Tut died of tuberculosis at the ripe age of 18, his people assumed it was because of the sins of his father. In other cultures, where diseases were believed to be caused by evil spirits, aliens would dance around the sick person and slather animal poo on his body. There are actually 4 kinds of germs. Bacteria, which cause sore throats, ear infections, and cavities. Viruses, which cause chickenpox, measles, and the flu. Fungi, which causes athlete's foot. And protozoa, which causes the runs. Bacteria collect nutrients from their environments to live. But not all bacteria are bad. Some bacteria, the kind you can find in yogurt, help break down the food and absorb nutrients, which makes you live longer. In fact, Bulgarian nomads who eat a lot of yogurt are known for their very long lives. So, how do we protect ourselves from these wretched beasties? Wash your hands. Well, that's all for today. This is Cameron with Cam Science News.
So in this example, which again makes me feel like an underachiever because I bet I learned stuff from that, definitely goes to show that young people aren't restricted by age. As long as you have internet access and the desire to tell people about something you know about, then you can really teach. And for me as a 15-year-old to have the world as my classroom because of posting on YouTube and having the chance to video conference, that was incredibly empowering. And students like us can do more than teach our fellow students. We can also help provide tech support to our teachers. This is probably seen a lot of times. If any of you have young kids, you might have asked for help with the iPhone before. I know my mom definitely has. And organizations like Generation Yes and Mouse Squad promote the idea of students really taking a more active role in supporting their teachers and implementing technology. In the course of 21st century education reform, lots of new organizations have been established. I've heard of ParentRevolution.org and many others. I know there are various ones organized by teachers, by school board administrators, by politicians, to the end of reforming education. But one key voice that I've seen missing over and over again is that of students. And I mentioned earlier how we can really be a key piece in discussing solutions for education reform, but it really needs to start with inviting us to the table. So I organized the Student Union group on Facebook as a place where that could really happen authentically. And, oh, that was an example. Actually, I would highly encourage you to look it up. That was an example of another teacher, Eva Ridenhour. She's a great writer. And so if you look at the questions on the Student Union, they all have to relate with schooling, what people think about it, their own experiences. People will post resources about conferences where students might be invited to speak. And our goal is to really empower more students across the nation and across the world, really, to have an active voice in their education. So, for instance, my friend Irene was asking, what is a teacher? And Hannah came up with a really cool answer. This is how I like to think of it. A teacher is someone who is walking on a path seeking understanding. A student comes along and asks which way to go. The teacher points down the path and they walk together. A lot of people assume the teacher's already at the end of the road, but I like to think that the road doesn't end. And to me, that as a summation of teaching was incredibly inspiring because I thought that it captured, to me, one of the great hopes that there is in teaching, which is that it's really a reciprocal process. And I think that that inspired me also in doing something like the Student Union and really getting all these ideas from what people were saying, their experiences, because I thought, okay, this goes to show that students know teachers can also learn from them. And the fact that it's entirely authentic student voices and that these are eloquently written opinions that ring true with their peers is something that I'm really happy about. So the methods that we use to share out viral videos or to start campaigns that work really well with my age group can truly be applied to education. And even though we teenagers are notorious for how hard it can be to reach us, if you see the success of things like Pony 2012, I know it's pretty controversial, but definitely it shows that we are reachable and we can be made extremely passionate about a wide variety of issues. Yet, despite this great possibility for connecting with us, and I've seen in my experiences, mostly at conferences back in the States, that a lot of people are wary of giving students the chance to go on the internet to create content and to consume content. And I think it's a little bit different. Raise your hand if you have what you would call restricted filtering on the internet. Okay, so you do. And is Facebook usually blocked at school? Yes. Okay, yes. So definitely the number of times that students have tried to get on Facebook at school and have been stymied by the filter, it's many, but also I personally know people who have then gone and set up proxy servers so they can do whatever they want. So, yeah, people will find ways to get around just about anything if they want to enough. I think that one of the issues with filtering, and I know that definitely there are reasons that you wouldn't want Facebook to be around in school, but filtering a lot of things or limiting what students can access in school is simply improved websites list to me is a really short-term approach. I prefer what I call the touch the stove approach, and it comes from a childhood memory, which is that I would be obnoxiously obstinate about wanting to touch the stove. It had some great allure to 3-year-old me, and my mom could never convince me otherwise, so one time she just turned the heat down really low and was like, go ahead and touch it. Naturally, I didn't want to touch the stove again until I started cooking, but that's another story. And my parents were fine with my sister and me being on the internet at a young age. We mostly went to the BBC Schools website, which had all these awesome games. I really enjoyed one about dissecting Egyptian mummies. And we learned so much from that experience, but we also made ridiculous YouTube videos where we would sing along to viral songs. And I think that the experience of now having to make hundreds of videos private because we are so embarrassed by our friends seeing them is actually a good one, because it means that we won't be doing more embarrassing things in front of a camera during spring break in college. The touch the stove approach taught me a lot about what to do and what not to do on the internet. So, in taking the short-term approach of filtering everything, students are being done a disservice. When we get home, we might go to those websites anyway, and moreover, we won't really know how to use them effectively or what not to do. A great example of really positive internet use comes from Palo Alto High School and the teacher Esther Ojiki, and she actually manages the journalism class, which is a hugely popular one. They produce, I think, 4 magazines, 2 websites. It's a really booming operation. And the students learn, they don't learn to not go to certain websites or to stay off of this blocked list. Instead, they learn about bias and how to evaluate things critically from a journalistic point of view. These are lessons that I don't think should be restricted to a journalism class. These are lessons that all students could benefit from. And when we learn to look at things critically, instead of always being protected and not allowed to go on websites at all in the first place, I think that we will have gained greater lessons for the long term. So, in thinking about technology use and where student voice comes in, I also had to really go back to the very basic essence of what school is for most people. And when I walk into school and I look around, and probably many of you would say the same thing, I know which one of these images my school looks more like. So raise your hand if the school you work at looks more like A, B, or C. And this seems like a really obvious question, but the reason I ask this with these images is because, well, A is pretty obviously Cathedral, St. Chapelle of Paris, I think, and B is from, I think, the British Museum, and C, well, it isn't the school at all. It's a hallway from the prison in Robben Island where Nelson Mandela was held for 20 years. The fact that our schools remind us more of prisons than of places for unlimited learning or inspiration, I think is a problem. A prison imprisons people. The old school model imprisons learning. That is, treating learning like it's something we can only do 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. Like learning is only what happens within those walls. And that learning only happens by listening to one person in one place. It just doesn't make sense. Now we have so many new sources of learning. And creating lifelong learners starts with the understanding that our world can be the best classroom of all. Teachers can come from all places and be of all ages. They can be like the tutors that I was privileged to have growing up. They can be young people like Cameron Manor with a video camera and cute stuffed animals, if necessary. They can be people like Sal Can, whose canacademy.org has over 3,100 teaching videos. And you probably know so many more teachers in your life who don't have credentials, people who you maybe learned from because of one incident, maybe strangers that you passed by taught you something. Seeing the world as a place of unlimited learning was one of the greatest lessons that I probably picked up from my childhood. So when I think of schools that facilitate independent thinking and creative doing, I ask questions. What if schools were more like libraries, open spaces acting as portals to knowledge and discovery? And more like cathedrals, not in the religious sense, but in inspiring students to really live with purpose and learn with purpose. We need spaces that inspire us and don't restrict us. Spaces where we can explore, discover, imagine, and make things. Maybe not the pillow forts and makeshift spaceships of childhood that I remember so fondly, but bigger, better things that require just as much force of creativity. Whether a book, a video, a conference, a plasma speaker, or the myriad other things that your students can probably come up with. Realizing the power and potential of harnessing youth digital culture for educational purposes, seeking students' perspectives on education issues, and ensuring that everything we learn has authentic purpose so that the question of why are we learning this is always answered. These are the actions that we need to take. Someday down the road, if I actually have that hypothetical conversation with my grandchildren that I mentioned at the beginning, I don't mind if they get a little googly-eyed when I say, no, we didn't actually have flying cars. And yes, I did get to meet the Margaret Atwood. But I do desperately want them to be amazed and incredulous when I say that when I went to school, everyone was supposed to do an assignment the same way. That if you wanted to do crazy awesome things like organize conferences or start nonprofits, you usually had to do that outside of school on your own time, and you wouldn't really be recognized for it. And that no, people in my time didn't change the world from their classroom chairs. It's strange thinking about education from the perspective of a hypothetical grandmother. You might say it's altruistic of me, but I think that really what I'm about to say might just be a selfish desire for me and my last years in high school too. You see, I desperately want those grandchildren to be amazed because I want them to know only a world where independent thinking and creative doing are the norm. The norm, and not the exceptions that slip through the cracks in our rigid schoolroom walls. Thank you. And I'd be happy to take any questions if you have questions you'd like to ask.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
I go to Rita Park School and I'm 12 years old, but I was just wondering, you talk a lot about like using the web and stuff for educational purposes, but I haven't really found any ways that I can get my school involved in it. Do you have any ways?
Sure. That's a great question. I'm also on the screen. That's weird. So, I think that one great way would be to talk to your teachers about incorporating different projects. For instance, like I remember I had a language arts project and I asked if we could maybe post some of the essays that we all wrote on the class blog, and your teacher might not take the idea, mine did, but it's always worth a try. And teachers will often be open-minded if you send a resource, a video that you really enjoyed. I know that if you go on YouTube Education, for instance, there's a lot of great stuff. Also, I know that educators might be really interested in TED Ed. How many of you have gone to TED Ed? Raise your hand. Oh, cool. So this has some great videos about just, actually a lot of things. There are some animated TED Talks. There are all kinds of subjects that are covered, so it has everything from like freshwater scarcity to the math of online dating. Maybe not super relevant just yet, but I think that this is a great example of a resource that teachers would be really open to. So yeah, get in touch with your teachers, with administrators, and if you feel like they're not really that open to bringing in online tools, then start doing it yourself. I think that self-directed learning is one of the coolest things that online technology allows us to do.
We do. Maybe just one more question. Okay.
Ask a question from your door.
Oh yeah, sure.
I had the pleasure of having Adora join many classes here in Calgary when I was video conference coordinator for the board. And at that time you were homeschooling. What was the reason or the thought for going back to a regular school after being homeschooled with your mom?
That's a great question. I think that a lot of it was just my traveling schedule, making it really difficult to effectively work one-on-one with the teachers that we had. And then also, because my sister was going to regular school, then there weren't as many people interested in doing it. But in looking back at my experience in deciding to go to public school, even though it resulted in me spending a lot more hours sitting bored in class, I will admit that, and those are hours that I probably could have spent, writing or probably exploring my passions a little more, that I'm glad I went because it gave me the experience necessary for me to really speak about these topics from an authentic student perspective. And otherwise, I would have come at it from definitely a different point of view. So I think that even though I didn't really realize it then when I signed up for school, that a lot of it was wanting to be better educated about the topic that I was speaking on so often.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming all the way to Calgary. We loved having you. And let me be the first to tell you you were not an underachiever. Thank you.
See you later. We'll see you later tonight, maybe?
407.
407.
Face-to-face.
So thank you everyone for coming.